No.
Today is August 6, 2013, 3 p.m., and we're sitting with Arloa Gerber.
Okay. Yeah, so.
Well, my grandparents, Ellis Wilson and Cora Harker Wilson, came to the area in came to Craig in 1943, but they were born and raised in the Meeker area. They had leased ranches between Meeker and Craig, which was the Pot Ranch and the Circle Bar, and then they ran my grandmother's ranch, my grandmother's father's ranch, when he died there around Meeker. And my grandpa Ellis was a cattle buyer for Producers Livestock in Denver, then went on his own in the Craig area until his death. And he traveled all over the country, Texas, New Mexico, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, maybe more, buying mostly calves and lambs for feeders, but also some cows and ewes also. Mostly, he dealt mostly in cattle, not the sheep, but he did do a little bit of sheep. Cora Harker, Ellis was the fifth of 7 children. And Cora Harker, she was the third of 4 children.
Okay.
And my grandpa died in 1978. My grandma died in 1987. They were married in Glenwood on 20th September 1919. They had 2 daughters. My mother, Dorothy May, she was born in 1920. And Alice Adeline was born in 1923. She is still living. My mother graduated from Meeker. My aunt graduated from Denver. That was while my grandpa was working for Producers there in Denver. And they moved to Craig around 1943 when I was just a baby. My mother separated divorced my dad, and they all of us moved back to Craig. And we lived, and I don't know how long, but I think it was at least 2 years up there in the Craig Motel, which was the one that burned, that is southwest of what's now the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived there. There was a little just a little place with a little kitchenette, and I don't know, I assume that we probably lived there for at least 2 years, but then they didn't buy the house at 390 Rose until 1947. So there's a couple of years there that I'm not real sure of, and I tried to get a hold of my aunt to find out, and she's in the hospital right now, so we have to wait for that. My mother and I lived there with them until I was 5, and then she remarried and moved to Meeker, and that's where I went to school.
Okay.
And then my grandpa died in 78, and then my grandma sold the house in 82. It's the 390 Rose Street, and she moved into the senior apartment. Can't even remember the name of them now. And she lived there until she died. She always had a big garden down there behind the house there on Rose Street. She was very active in cowbells and the does. In fact, I kind of think that she was probably one of the charter members of this particular drove here, from what I gathered in the stuff that's on Past Perfect there, and that was in 1956. She was also active in the hospital auxiliary, and she had crocheted an altar cloth for the local Doze chapter, but I still have not found out whatever happened to that.
Right.
and it was just a beautiful.
That's the one you mentioned the other day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was an excellent seamstress. She made all of my grandpa's shirts. Of course, they were the Western style with the snaps and the whole bit. And of course, she made clothes for all the rest of us too. But she was really good cook. She had all sorts of neat things about her. My grandpa, he was kind of my idol for a long time. He had this big old Palomino horse they called Miami that he and his nephews, Homer, Joe, and Jim Wilson, broke and trained for cutting. And he and Miami won many contests around the area, and he also team roped off with him. You know, that's one ropes the head and one guy ropes the heels. And he roped with Bob Crosswaite and Homer Wilson and a bunch of others that I probably can't think of right now, but that was the two main ones. And my grandmother's grandmother, Adeline Warfield Harker Hornbeck, had a homestead there at the Fluorescent Fossil Beds.
Oh.
And it is all restored, and it's a pretty prominent thing right there at the Fossil Beds National Monument over there around Florissant. And she was pretty much, after my grandmother's grandfather died, they lived around the Denver area. And after, I kind of think there was one of the big floods and real bad weather and everything, and then he got sick and died, and then she was on her own, so she went out and she homesteaded this place there around Florissant. She was a pretty rough old gal. She was, I mean, she had to have been, because she pretty much took care of that place all by herself. Her and her sons. She had two boys with Mr. Harker. And then she married this Hornbeck, and that was how it come. It's the Hornbeck homestead.
Oh, okay.
And then she married another guy, and she ran him off. So, but yeah, she was quite the character. I guess, but my grandma always told about, her dad was born in the Cherokee Nation.
Oh.
Around in Oklahoma,
right,
around over in there. And of course, he's a pretty good storyteller, I guess. Well, he told my grandma and probably the other kids too. Well, since he was born on the reservation, his mother was a squaw. Well, then when she finally met her and she had red hair, she was no more Indian than... And she says, well, Grandma, you don't look Indian to me. And she says, well, dear child, where did you ever come up with that idea? Well, that's what Papa said. Okay, wait till I get a hold of that, Frank. But yeah, she was quite the character, I guess. But I remember my grandfather. Ellis. He was in the livestock business. He bought and sold livestock from the local people to other people in other areas.
Right.
Because he was just a market for them, so that the local people would have a way to sell their livestock, and he was well respected. Actually, both of them were. Her and him both. And so I don't know what else.
What was it like growing up, in Moffat County? And
Well, actually, around the area, well, because I was 5 when my mother remarried. That was, I moved to Meeker and then went to school
Oh,
there.
that's right.
Yeah, and then I didn't
Okay.
come back to Craig until after I went to 1-year college in Denver.
Okay.
So it was in '62 when I came back.
Okay.
But it was, I don't know, I lived in town. And so, we just had the kids around the neighborhood, we played with the ones across the street and down the street and everything. And I didn't, I didn't ever really know anything about not being able to have things. Of course, I was an only child for 8 years, so I was the only grandchild that was around for them to spoil, because my aunt, when she got married, well, then they moved to Texas.
Oh.
And so for the most part, there is a picture of my cousin, her oldest child, and I up here in the porch swing at the Craig Motel when we were just little baby. He's 2 years younger than me. And so they really never had a chance to spoil anybody else but me. So, and I got to go with them. My grandpa traveled all over the country, the area, with his livestock business. And of course, my grandma and I would go with him. My mom was working, so I don't go with him. So I got a chance to travel with them quite a bit. One thing that I really remembered was one time when we were somewhere down in Texas. We were in this big hotel, and I was really so impressed. I don't know how many times, I guess they keep telling me this, that I went up and down, up and down, up and down in the elevator.
Right.
They had this really neat old black guy. That was the elevator operator. And so he'd take me with him. And we went up and down the elevator all the time, and that was what kept me entertained.
Okay.
What do you remember when you came back to Craig? You said you came back in '62 after a year of college. So what was Craig like when you came back? Was it different? Was it?
Well, yeah, it kind of was. It's starting to grow. And there were still a lot of areas, we're out there, right about what is Finley Lane now. It was out in the country. And that was Craig, the town of Craig was back this way. I don't know how many blocks from there, because there was ranches right out there where that is now. And so, it was still a pretty small town.
Right.
But, I don't know, there was a lot of people that my grandparents were friends with, and they had kids that were my age. And I kind of struck up a friendship with this one girl, and, every time and then when I'd come back for, like Christmas vacation, or during the summer, or anything like that, when I'd come back to Craig and spend some time with my grandparents, and we'd run around together. And she worked there with a beauty shop just down the street here a ways, and she worked there after school. And so there was a bunch of the gals around that age group, and we'd go to the rodeos. Of course, that was really a big thing, going to the rodeos and stuff like that. And it was different. And then, of course, when I came back in '62, when I had gone to 1 year in college out in Denver, and had been accepted into the FBI.
Wow.
And I was supposed to go out there. Well, this old guy that was really good friends with my grandpa, he said, told my grandpa, he said, don't let her go out there. She won't like it. It'll be terrible. Don't let her go. He says, I think I can probably find her a job here. Of course, he was on the board of directors of the bank, and of course, he owned the First Federal Savings and all that. He says, I think I can find her a job. So I told the FBI, okay, all right, I'm not going.
Wow.
It's probably a good thing, because I'd had to have gone out to D.C. And right there, about that general time, it was,
Sorry.
it was really rough. Washington, D.C. was really rough. India and I had never even been there, and so, and then...
what would you have done in the FBI, just out of curiosity?
It would have been secretarial.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
And, you know, if it all came about, well, you know...
that was just interesting to me.
Yeah, might have been a agent, I don't know, you know, but that was what I had going in for, was in the secretarial pool. And, because that was what I had taken in school, was along that line of work.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what I would have done, but... so eventually, I did get a job at what was the Moffat County State Bank, the Bank of the West now. But, and I had, I spent a lot of time out there. They had the roping club. And there's a bunch of guys, you know, they get together and with this roping club, and they just go out to fairgrounds and have roping nights. And somewhere along the line, my grandpa got this great big old sorrel horse that used to be a racehorse. So he decided I needed that horse for barrel racing. Well, of course, you know, a racehorse, you know, they get on the track and all they want to do is run. And no rhyme or reason to what they're doing, or they just run. And so I worked with that old horse for the longest time. I thought my arms were about to fall off to trying to hold him back, you know, so I get out on the racetrack and try to make him walk.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Well, that was very interesting for a while, but eventually I got him so he settled down, and then I started working him on the barrels. And, I don't know, we did fair, not anything shy about, you know, because it's really tall horse, you know. Most generally the barrel racing horses are pretty small, you know, so you cut around those barrels really sharp. But then I started going with one of the kids that was belonged to the roping club. And we went together for a while, and then we broke up. And then he was killed in a car wreck.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my.
And my husband now was working for his folks at the time. So he had decided that he had decided already a long time before that he wanted to go out with me. So when he called up and, well, okay, I guess I might as well get back in circulation somehow, and I didn't get very far. So, and then see, I worked for the bank there until we got married, and then he was working down around Lay, just up on the creek from Lay for these people, and then you get two women, especially an older, domineering type woman in the same kitchen and, well, in the same household together, and it just doesn't work too well. So they tried to tell me that there was only one way to catch my horse, and that was to run them all in the crowd. And with her, I could catch her anywhere, anytime. I mean, she was just a big baby. So anyway, I went out to go for a ride one day. I just went out through the gate, caught her, led her through the gate. Oh, the guy that Herb was working for he just hit the ceiling. You know, everybody, of course, he used all sorts of nice language. That you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
That's not the way you're supposed to catch horses. So I just got all mad and turned her loose and went back in the house. And Irv come in a little while later and he says, well, how does it feel to be without a job? I said, oh, really? You know, gosh, this was like 2 months after we were married. And so we came into town and we stayed with Steve when it was in the interview, and Yvonne for a few days while we found us another place to live, which was down in Davis Gardens on Stout Street. It was a little old rental place. There was just barely one bedroom, barely a bath, barely a kitchen, and a dining area and a living room all together. And if you would sit on the couch in the living room and look across to the dining area, you could look up and see daylight up at the top, between the roof and the wall,
right.
The ceiling and the wall. Yeah, that was quite something. You know, we stayed there clear through the winter.
Oh.
But it took a little bit to heat it, but you know, 'cause we didn't have to pay utilities, we just paid a flat fee. But it was interesting. Then he went to work for the county, and then I went back to work at the bank, and stayed there until I got pregnant with our older son, and they had this rule that you couldn't work past 6 months, which was, they had done that just not too awfully long before that.
Oh.
This one other gal was having complications with her pregnancy, and so they made that rule. So I had to quit. So then I spent the next, oh gosh, what was it? 68, 83, 25, 15 years taking care of the kids. And Irv was working for the county and for, creek sand and gravel. And he finally went to work up at the mine, Seneca mine up at Hayden. And then in 83, I started working for the post office. And I had a rural mail route. So I drove 89 miles all around out here every day.
Wow.
Summer, winter, anytime. There were a few times that I had to turn around and come back to town.
Right.
Because there was a place, especially up north of town, up there, that it didn't take too much for it to blow shut.
Wow.
So there was times I couldn't even see where I was going.
Oh my
So I just,
God.
okay, all right, turn around, come back to town, and maybe go around this direction up as
Yeah.
far as I could go, and to the east, because I'd go clear around up there and then come
Right.
back around and come in to on the east side of town.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a lot easier than what the old guy that started that route did. I mean, he was either horseback or sleigh or whatever, maybe snowshoes,
Right.
and he lived up there at that northern part of the route. That's where he lived.
Wow.
And so it was, I'll bet you that was really something. And they were still using the satchel. It was an old leather
Right.
satchel when I started to work there, and I used it for quite a while, quite a number of years, and then they decided I needed a new one because it was getting pretty dilapidated, so I gave it to the museum.
Oh, okay.
So they've got it here. It's probably been in storage all that time. But it was... But this was supposed to be about my grandparents.
No, this is fine. This is also about the changes you see in Craig, so this is good. How did you see the town change working at the post office?
Not an awful lot for the town. Of course, that was right about during the boom time.
Yeah.
But, you know, I came in and I did what I needed to do there at the post office and went and did my 89 miles and came back and...
Were there new additions added to your route all the time?
Few.
Oh, okay.
There was a few, not an awful lot. Most of the expansion came either before or after
Okay.
I was working there, because most of it was pretty stable while I was, you know, there was a little bit of expansion, but not an awful lot.
How long were you at the post office?
17 years.
Oh. So you were retired in 2000?
2003.
So you were there for 20 years then. Because you said you started in 83?
No, it was 86.
86, oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
No, it was 83 when we moved into our house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where the 83 comes in at. Yeah.
Okay. And what was it like raising a family in this area, in Craig?
It wasn't too bad. You know, for the most part, we lived out of town. And, you know, of course, we had to bring the kids into... Of course, there was a school bus. You know, they could ride the school bus. But then after they started getting involved with things, well, they'd have to bring them back and forth to town. And all that. But, yeah, it wasn't... you know, we got by. You know, we didn't ever have too many problems, you know. And the kids, for the most part, did really good in school and had pretty good teachers. It was, occasionally, you know, there was one of them that one of them couldn't get along with, but, you know, you always have to go through that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and, you know, they got involved in 4-H. And
Okay.
that was pretty much all they... Of course, the older boy, he was when he was in Honor Society, and he was in band, and the younger one, Wade, he kind of liked the sports part of it, and when he was in middle school? Yeah, I think it was middle school that he got into wrestling, and he tried basketball, and yeah, he just kept deciding, I don't want to. He tried football, tried all that, you know, and then he got into the rodeo club. Did that. Of course, you know, we had to shuffle him around to all these different things. And, when the older boy was in band, the high school band went to D.C., and they got to take a trip to D.C., and I was just kind of a chaperone, you know, I wasn't an official, I was just there, but I kind of helped, you know, buttons and stuff like that, but yeah, that was really neat. But.
Okay. What types of things would you do for general recreation with the family?
Well, we had our cows.
Okay.
We always had a few cows, and of course, Irv's dad, he had cows.
Right.
And so we just kind of had them all together.
Right.
For a long time, and then his brothers bought some cows, and then we kept them together for a long time too. So we always pretty much had our cows. We still have cows. And of course we had to do that, and we did a little bit of haying, but not enough. We didn't have all that much, you know, so we almost always had to buy pay. There was usually a dance here and there, or, of course there's 4-H activities and, the fair and all that. And, of course, all these country folk, you go to the fair and have all of your kids involved, and everybody was, of course, you spend the biggest share of your time out there, but that, there's always somebody had a sick cow or a sick sheep or a sick pig or something like that, So there was always things, you'd have to hang around.
Right.
But, we had a lot of fun. It was the fair.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was about 81 and 2, we started taking square dance lessons. And the boys took lessons with us at the same time.
Right.
Of course, they just passed us up like we were standing still. These older people, it takes them a lot longer to absorb all this stuff. And the kids, I think they kind of got bored after a while. They go, oh, come on, what's wrong with you guys? This is simple. But
y'all did it together before?
Yeah. Yeah, and there was, they kind of did it as a 4-H project.
See.
So they got some other kids to take lessons too, so they would have girls to dance with too, So, but they didn't stick with it, they stuck with it a lot longer than the other kids did, mostly because that was the only place that they could. We couldn't just leave them there. They weren't old enough to be left at home by themselves, so they had to go with us.
Right.
But, so they got out. They lost interest in that, after a while, because, there wasn't any girls to dance with, and, they always had to dance with the older women. And, but we stayed with it. There was several years there that we didn't have square dancing because we didn't have a caller could come in and call, and then we got back into it again after they found another caller. So now we're down to a caller once a month and dance to records the rest of the time.
Okay.
And that's a challenge. But that's usually what we did for entertainment. Very, very seldom did we ever go to the movies.
Right. But it was available if you wanted to.
Yeah, it was available.
What about the Cosgrove? Did you ever go to the Cosgrove? Anything there?
I went there with my grandparents and grandpa occasionally.
Okay.
But, of course, he'd go in the bar and I'd have to sit out and the rest of it. But occasionally we went to the restaurant part, and they did have good food.
Okay.
They did have good food. And it was a neat place to go, in a way. It's kind of uptown. It's kind of like, ooh, this is really uptown.
Yeah.
It wasn't like going to one of the Greasy Spoons, which we did more often than not. And we really didn't go out to eat all that much either. But,
interesting. Just kind of to wrap it up and just kind of bring it all together. How do you feel about Craig over the last few years and how it is now?
Well, it could have not grown quite so fast.
Okay.
Or so much.
Right.
I kind of go along with some of it to a certain extent. It's kind of nice to have things available, but yet you think, well, no, it'd be so much nicer if we didn't have all of these, the crime and the drugs and the stuff like that, you know, that back then there was not really the drugs, but, you know, there were drunks around town, you know, but as far as the crime and all that stuff, it wasn't all that much. And of course, back then, the kids could do ornery little things, and the cops would say, hey, you know you're not supposed to do that, go on home.
Yeah.
And leave it at that. But not anymore.
How long have you been volunteering here at the museum?
I don't know. Let's see, I've been retired from the post office since '03, and it was probably in '04 when I started. Because it was in November, I think it was.
It's almost 9 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And how did you get involved?
Through Jan.
Oh.
A lot of it, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it was through her, and then too just the idea that I was interested in it.
Yeah.
And then I got on the board too.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of get to help make decisions. And
Right.
You're currently on the board?
And I don't know how long I've been on the board. I really have no idea.
I didn't realize you were. That's really cool. Any other stories you'd like to have recorded, or anything you feel the world needs to know?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.